Now, the original plan, Liz threw a monkey wrench in my plans. The original plan for tonight, I was going to talk about, in part leading up to the precept ceremony, I was going to talk about the trappings of Zen and how they can serve as a benefit and not as a detriment if you don't let them. But then Liz said something before last week's service about how, I'm trying to remember exactly how you phrased it, how to practice when I'm not here, or
like how
something
to
like that.
Establish
like at home or whatever.
A home practice.
Right. So for context, I'm going to refer to a book. I know I've talked about this book a little bit before. It's my favorite book about Korean Buddhism. The title, as you can see, strangely enough with a numeral in it, is 6 Ways to the Heart, the Essence of the Korean Buddhist Practices, right? So the focus of this book is on practices. I think of this book as kind of laying out the full diet and exercise program of what Korean Buddhism has on offer. So let me start by just explaining why I find this book is what it has to say is so valuable. As folks probably already know, I started my Buddhist training in the Japanese Soto tradition. And in my experience, at least with the teachers that I was working with, the practice of sitting meditation, zazen, that's the meal. That's the central thing that you do. That's the most important thing you do. Everything else is just seasoning. That's the main course. Sitting meditation, zazen, is the panacea. If there's a problem in your life, more Zen is the solution, and more zazen is the solution. And if the problem is with your zazen, then the way to fix it is with more zazen. So that's kind of the focus there. But if you read the words of the Buddha recorded in the scriptures, there's a clear sense that different teachings of different practices are appropriate for different people at different points in their lives. Our personalities, our intellect, our emotional lives, our health, our life situations, these are all factors that can change the practices that we need to have, that we need in order to have a rich spiritual life. So matching the practice regimen to the practitioner is a form of upaya. It's a form of skillful means, just as a physician must match the treatment plan to the needs of a specific patient. So the reason I love this book so much is that it lays out the essential practices that have been transmitted and preserved in the Korean Buddhist tradition. These are the main ingredients in the pharmacopoeia, if you will, that's available to treat our spiritual disease, so that each practitioner, in consultation with their teacher, can develop an individualized treatment plan, I guess you could say. As the introduction to the book says, any attempt to determine which method is best would be sadly misguided. The Buddha often likened himself to a doctor. 100 diseases have as many medicines, and it would be most unwise to insist on only one medicine for the treatment of a wide assortment of ailments. So let me go over the basic 6 practices that the book is talking about. All of them are different but complementary ways of achieving kind of the same mental state. Chitai kagrata, shim il song, one-pointedness of mind, right? How to focus the mind, concentrate, achieve a concentrated state of mind. All of these are activities that we've done corporately, that can be done corporately in a group setting. All but one of them we've actually done in the time that we've been here together at the center, in the short time that it's been open to the public. But all of them can also be done individually. So these are all things that you can do at home on your own. The most obvious one is meditation, right? What this book refers to as Ganhwa Son meditation, or Ganhwa Son practice. Son means meditation. Since our lineage here at the center is in the Son tradition, this is kind of the defining essential practice, but it's not the only one. It by no means is it the only one. The Buddha taught that meditation can be done while sitting, standing, walking, or lying down. And what's important about the posture of the body is that it supports the activity of the mind in coordination with the movement of the breath. And the body is there to support that process, the rhythm of the breath. Here at the center, obviously, we meditate. We meditate together at every service, sitting meditation, sometimes walking meditation. We've done a mini retreat that focused on sitting and walking meditation. I hope in the future we're going to do more of those. I really want those to become a regular thing that we're doing on a pretty predictable schedule. However, to really benefit from meditation, it needs to be a regular practice. It needs to be something that's a part of your life every day, consistently, even if it's just for a few minutes. Doing this doesn't require anything special. You can do it anytime, you can do it anywhere. However, having a consistent time for it in your daily schedule, having a special place that's set aside for it in your home can help you to establish and maintain your dedication to keeping the practice, ingrained the habit of doing it. Having even a corner in a room dedicated to meditation will help you transition from kind of the cares of the day to the state of mental clarity, and that it also serves as a reminder to sit. You see that corner of the room, that reminds you, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be doing that every morning, or kind of whatever the deal that you've made with yourself happens to be. Creating a little altar on a table or a shelf can help you to remember that this is a sacred activity. This is a spiritual activity. Using incense, ringing a little bell at the beginning and end of the meditation period, that can help you remember that you're delineating a special time, right? You're setting aside a sacred time. To use the Greek, a kairos, a sacred time that's for a special purpose, for the spiritual activity. But it's also a practice you can do anywhere, obviously, even if just for a minute. When you're at work, you're stuck at a stoplight, you're waiting for an appointment, right? Even 3 focused breaths, just kind of 3 deep focused breaths can be helpful. Calm and center your mind and your body. You can bring that meditative state to everyday activities too, especially kind of simple, repetitive kinds of activities. Washing dishes, folding a laundry, cleaning a house, mowing a lawn, walking through an airport. These are all things that could be done in a meditative way. In fact, work practice is a standard part of the retreat experience. If you ever do a kind of a multi-day retreat at a retreat facility, doing work practice and doing it in a meditative frame of mind while you're peeling the potatoes or you're cleaning the toilet or whatever your work assignment is, that's a part of it too. Doing that kind of activity deliberately, intentionally, mindfully, there's no distinction between that and meditation on the cushion. The next 2 practices in the 6 ways are Yombol, which is Buddha recitation, and mantra recitation practice. So in other words, those are both forms of chanting, right? 2 different forms of chanting. The only distinction is what's being chanted. What are the words that are being chanted? Yombol involves invoking the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, the ancestral teachers by chanting their names, chanting verses of gratitude dedicated to them. Mantra practice means to chant a series of sacred syllables or sounds in a cycle, usually for an extended period of time, chanting that mantra kind of over and over again. Again, this is something that we do at every service, at least a little bit, right? Some services feature it more than others. The full moon liturgy, for example, includes the homage to the Buddhas chant. We're expressing gratitude to all the Buddhas, to the Bodhisattvas, to the teachers that preserved and passed on the teaching, the entire Sangha throughout space and time. When there's a 5th Wednesday in the month, the center of the service is dedicated, we've only had a couple of those, right? Dedicated to Keto chanting, raising the energy of the focused mind by rhythmically chanting sacred names and mantras for an extended period of time. This is, again, an easy practice that you can do anywhere, anytime, especially chanting sacred names or chanting mantras that are short, kind of easy to memorize, easy to bring to mind. You can begin and end your meditation, or end your meditation period with chanting Sogomuni Bol, or the Heart Sutra mantra that we chanted just a few minutes ago 3 times. Even just a few times, 3 times, 9 times. Get out your little red bracelet when you join the center, and 9 little beads on there, right? 9 little knots. That'd be a good start. Chant every night as part of your bedtime routine. With meditation, you can find moments during the day when you can chant spontaneously, like for the duration of a red light when you're stuck in traffic. Or while you're going about everyday activities, again, cooking, cleaning, walking somewhere, these sorts of things. If there are other people around, you might be worried about disturbing them or being embarrassed if maybe they can hear you. It might be tempting to just kind of chant inside your head, just in a mental way. That's not quite the same thing, though. Part of chanting is the embodiment, right? It's something you're not just doing with your mind. It's something you're doing with your body and with your breath. It's not just a mental activity. So you don't need to use your full voice all the time, obviously, but you can adjust your volume for the situation. You can move your lips and whisper. You don't have to do it really, really loudly. But having the movement of the body and the breath as part of the experience is a little better way to do it. And speaking of embodied practices, I'm going to skip to the last one in the book and talk about bowing or prostration practice. So that chapter reads in part. I'm going to read you a couple of paragraphs here from that chapter. The highest point of the body is the forehead. The lowest is the feet. Placing my loftiest point lower than the other person's bottommost is showing total respect and unmitigated humility. Koreans bow to everyone. The Buddha, bodhisattvas, parents, teachers, seniors, spouses, relatives, religious figures, and strangers. Korean Buddhists find it an important spiritual practice to humble themselves, even to those who are junior in age and social position, inferior in intelligence and competence, and those who are critical, abusive, angry, or chiding. Why do we practice something that is seemingly demeaning? In short, we do it to be happy. The Buddha taught us that the root cause of the fundamental human condition of unsatisfactoriness lies in the clinging to the non-existent I. This foolishness leads people to create the illusionary dichotomy of I and other, and we plunge ourselves into competition, striving to outdo others. This is called arrogance. This bad habit puts us at the mercy of roller coaster moods, making us puffed up with pride, dejected, joyful, and sad in turn. Arrogance can never lead us to true happiness. Bowing is the best cure for such conceit. If we cultivate humility with our body, the understanding of non-self will naturally grow in our mind. Such an understanding will transform a selfish and impetuous character ensnared in a desire to win into a kind and gentle person. Prostration is also something that you can do at the beginning and end of that we do here together at the beginning and end of every service. The homage to the Buddhist chant in every full moon service includes additional bowing. Those of you who came to the New Year's lunar service will remember the 108 bows that are part of that liturgy. Folks are getting ready to take the precepts next month. They know I expect them to do bowing practice at home, since I've asked them to do 1,000 prostrations as part of the preparation for that. Logan and I were talking about that muscle soreness that can result from that before the service tonight. Bowing practice is definitely something that can be part of your regular practice. It's not as portable as meditation or even chanting, but it's at least something you can do before and after you meditate at home. The other practice in the book that we have done together here, obviously, is sutra reading, referring to the scriptures of the tradition. First service of every month is dedicated to focusing on the scripture. I frequently use scripture passages in Dharma talks. Obviously, we chant the Heart Sutra every week, part of the service liturgy. The Six Ways chapter on sutra reading points out that this practice can take many different forms, because there's lots of different reasons to read a sutra, which require reading it in different ways. Obviously, you shouldn't read a sutra the way you'd read a novel. It's not something we do for entertainment, right? So that's not the way that you'd want to read a sutra. But if your goal is learning, then you may need to read a sutra kind of the way you'd read a textbook. You're studying it in order to understand its meaning, thinking hard about it. That's an intellectual task. That's that kind of reading. But we can also read sutras as a spiritual practice, not with the intellect, but kind of more with the heart, more with our emotions. This kind of practice has the same goal as in the Benedictine tradition, in the Catholic tradition, the idea of what's called lectio divina, divine reading, right? Reading as a spiritual tool. This is definitely a practice I encourage you to do on your own. Pick a short passage. The goal is to read deeply, not to read a lot. Read the passage slowly, kind of savor it. Maybe read it out loud. Hear it in the sound of your own voice. stop frequently and listen to how your emotions and your body are responding to the text. Read it several times. Don't worry about rushing through a text. The goal is to be spiritually moved. It's not to kind of churn through a book like you might, again, a novel or something like that. It's a sutra. It ain't Harry Potter. As with all the other practices, it can be helpful to have a regular routine around sutra reading, maybe in the morning, before or after your meditation session, maybe in the evening, maybe right before bed, something like that. Some texts naturally lend themselves to being read that way, especially ones that come in shorter passages. The Dhammapada is a good text that works this way because it has a lot of kind of short verses. You could pick it up and put it down and do a chunk, do just 2 or 3, spend a half an hour reading just 2 or 3 passages kind of over and over again. The Diamond Sutra is another one. The Diamond Sutra's chapters are really short, so that's another text that would lend itself to being read like that. There are other texts that technically aren't sutras, but might still be useful to read that way. Shantideva's Way of the Bodhisattva, again, is kind of a bunch of short verses. This one, again, in the Korean tradition, Sangha Kwigam, a handbook of Korean practice. It's the mirror on the Sun School of Buddhism. This is, again, the introduction is ridiculously long. But once you get past that, it's a number of verses. Again, it comes in verses, so you could just pick 1 or 2 verses and kind of work your way through it over an extended period of time. The one practice that's discussed in the 6 Ways book that we haven't done yet is sutra copying, which refers to hand copying a sutra. This can be done for an entire long sutra, but in the East Asian calligraphy tradition, just writing one character, just writing Buddha, right, can be a form of sutra copying. So sometimes the act of writing itself can be seen as a means of studying, even to help you memorize the text. But the act of writing can also be seen as a spiritual discipline, even sometimes to the point of spending months copying a text and then burning it, because it's the sacrifice of the commitment that went into the labor that went into the copying. Obviously, copying a sutra can be done as an art form. I'm planning a workshop. This is one thing that I picked up to help sort of plan the workshop. I'm planning a workshop for later in the spring about sutra copying, couple-hour-long workshop that we'll do. I've got a few different things that we'll use for that and some materials I've collected to use that as a practice, to have a chance to learn about that. Getting away from these 6 practices that are in the book, there are also kind of micro practices that you can incorporate into your day, into your daily life, to kind of remind yourself of your spiritual intentions during the day. Expressing gratitude before you eat. That's an obvious example. Some meal gathas are at the beginning of the special text section in the liturgy book for the sinner. The one I learned from Hirosunim is easy to and pretty quick to learn. This food comes to us from the labors of beings past and present. Through this, our body, mind is nourished, our practice sustained. Gratefully, we accept this meal. Or again, you guys who are going through the precepts training in the training manual, I gave you one that's even easier. Remembering that we live at the expense of other life, may we be worthy of the sacrifice. That's kind of summarizes the biggest point right there. In a similar way, there are short gathas, verses that can be used throughout the day in concert with your daily activities. The Japanese Zen teacher Dogen, the recently deceased Vietnamese Tien teacher Thich Nhat Hanh provide collections of these. I have a couple of copies of Thich Nhat Hanh's book about chanting, and this includes some examples of those kinds of gathas. For example, he gives you one for when you greet someone, you should pray, "A lotus for you, a Buddha to be." Right, just that little phrase. Dogen even has verses for mundane things like washing a dish, right? Or if you've been to the bathroom here in the Zen Center, there's a mantra, there's a verse right on the wall in the bathroom. Wearing a mala. Wearing a mala can be thought of as a practice in and of itself, aside from using it as a tool for other practices, which you can do, obviously, for meditation and chanting, using the beads to count. Personally, whenever I put on a mala in the morning, or if I've taken it off to wash dishes or something like that, there's a little ritual that I do when I do that. For each loop around my wrist, homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha, and then depending on how many loops I have left, I go through the mantra from the Heart Sutra, Gate Gate Paragata Parasamgate Bodhisvaha, as I put it on. Nobody taught me to do that. That's just something I do. I don't even know when I started doing that. It's an example of how you can work little things into your day to remind yourself of your commitments and your values. So this illustrates the fact that you can think about your own lifestyle and your routines. You can think about ways to incorporate practices, big practices, little practices, that will work for you into your day. The more personal they are, the more meaningful they're going to be. So I hope that this is something you can think about. This is something we could continue to have a conversation about among ourselves as you explore ways to kind of further incorporate the Buddha Dharma into your life in ways that will be enriching and helpful. Sangbala Shipshio, may you, I, and all beings manifest enlightenment.